On the Good Morning America, this is Martha Boneta filling in for John today on the John Fredericks Show. We have a wonderful lineup for you for the rest of the morning. First, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce you to Mari Hardenberg. She is the COO for CAMS Marketing, where they engage in marketing and technology. Good morning, Mari. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Martha. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So our next guest, Mari and I had the pleasure of visiting in New Mexico. Our next guest is Steve Wilmeth. He is a fifth-generation New Mexican, and he's also a rancher. His farm is located in the footprint of the monument located there in New Mexico called the Oregon Monument. And we are so delighted to have you on the show with us today. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Good morning, all. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, Steve, thank you so much. I had the opportunity to visit with you in New Mexico, there in the footprint of the monument, and really take a look at the incredible farming operation you have there. And I wanted to ask you two questions. One is, how is the monument impacting your farm and your ranch and other ranchers there in New Mexico? And what do we need to do? What do our listeners need to do to help you make changes that will lift this burden that is upon our ranchers?
Let me start by saying a couple things, and the first, that I am a federal lands rancher, and that carries the burden of regulatory demands and constraints of what we can do. I am a border rancher in that I can see the Mexican border on our southern horizon. And like you say, I'm now a national monument rancher, which puts added burden on us. And there's risk with each, but together they become outright frightening. The extent of what we will feel with the monument will not yet be known, until we see the full management plan. And that poses a huge risk to us and great concern. As it stands, Martha, we are not an object of the designation, and we stand in outright risk of being pushed aside on the basis, if there is threat to an object that is named in the monument, that we don't have similar standing. So the long-term aspect of the risk to us is not yet known.
Understood. And, I have to say, this issue is near and dear to my heart. I'm a family farmer, and our farmers and our ranchers are the heartbeat of America, the backbone of America. And so when I hear about situations like this, where there's just complete and total overreach, and it's impacting and affecting the ability of our ranchers to farm to their fullest extent possible, to know the depths and breadth of prosperity they could have, but for these restrictions that are placed upon you, it pulls at my heartstrings. And so how can we change the grazing language to reduce the size of the monument? What would you like to see that would make the biggest change for you and other ranchers?
In terms of the grazing language, and remember, there are 40 ranches, there are 90 families that derive their income from the ranches on this monument. The current grazing language is very weak. It puts us in an inferior position relative to the protection of those objects. We would like to see it strengthened, and the strengthening could be done by taking grazing language from other monuments, other recent monuments created through the Antiquities Act, and give us a fighting chance that the issues of the monument don't supersede our presence and the value of our livestock and our presence on the ground. that language is available. We can work with you, share with you in terms of that language, but realize that we need to be elevated into an equal position of objects that are being protected.
Thank you. I have Mari Hardenberg with me here in the studio, and Mari, you spent considerable amount of time in New Mexico near this monument, right?
Yes, I grew up near the monument. I'm a New Mexico native, and I grew up about 30 miles from Steve's Ranch.
And how important is it to you to see these ranchers be able to thrive and succeed on this land and not have the burden that's upon them if it's not lifted? How important it is to you to see them succeed?
It's paramount. It's very important to me. This is their livelihood we're talking about. Their people, and their status does need to be elevated in that proclamation. They need to be above the mice that are listed.
Yeah, so can you speak a little bit about that? Apparently there are mice that are being protected, is that right?
Steve, you want to speak to that?
Well, they're not currently, and I think we don't have a great connection, but I think I heard you say mice being protected. Currently, no. But we stand the risk of, we all know the risks and the spread of constraints put upon us by the Endangered Species Act. At any time, something like that could arise, and because of our relative position among protection, that would be placed above us. And that will be a continuing problem. As it's written, future objects discovered will be elevated above us. And to the extent of the impact already on the basis of the federal lands impact, we have about a 17% stewardship recruitment within our little community. And that means less than 1 in 5 operations have a young steward standing in the wings. We simply cannot offer opportunity. We can't go out and capitalize new projects. We can't create parallel enterprises to keep the youth here. And remember that we operate in a county that in less than 1 acre in 9 is owned privately. We have to stake our infrastructure investments. We have to stake the future of our youth, where they're going to live, the job opportunities, around a situation where less than 1 in 9 acres is privately held. The rest is government of one form or other with all of the constraints thereof.
Well, I think that what a lot of Americans don't know, because a lot of Americans that hear about these stories, they aren't on the ranches. They aren't able to see firsthand what the impact is. And having been able to visit with you and see firsthand what it's like, I have to tell you, my heart I left with my heart in my throat, wishing that there was something that could be done immediately to provide relief. And I was hoping you could speak a little bit. Could you tell everybody what the Western Heritage Alliance is, and if they want to help, how they can reach out to these folks and offer some help in any way possible?
The Heritage Alliance is a group of local, originally ranchers, and we were referenced as the 5 angry ranchers by the environmental community who pushed the monument. But a collection of people who recognize the value of the customs and culture and the impact that our industry has on the local economy, and how unique it is among southern border ranches. Our chairman is Professor Emeritus Dr. Jerry Shigadance, retired from New Mexico State University. And I would ask that we will provide the contact information to you, Martha, and folks could contact you through your website or this radio station for that. But the need is to recognize and herald the fact that there's a heritage here at stake. There's customs and culture at stake. But moreover, there is a huge national security implication And I think we need to talk about that.
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things that we spoke of as well is that you're witnessing the drug cartel there on the border as well near your farm, right?
Yeah, we're about 30 miles from the border itself. And remember that the Mexican border at times in the last decade has been considered the most dangerous border in the entire world.
Yes, and so I guess you're pleased then when you heard the recent news with the president, the White House administration rolling out the plan to have the National Guard to help defend the border there. I'm sure you were very pleased. Yeah, we very
part
pleased.
Part of that high-risk area is directly south of us in the Santa Teresa area. But, let's talk real briefly about these sanctuary areas. And the sanctuary is a term now being used, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. I think the listeners need to recognize that we have had sanctuary regions and subregions on this border for decades. These smuggling corridors, these farm-to-market corridors, these migration routes are now worth billions of dollars, and they will be defended ruthlessly. And when we place these large rural protected areas on the border with sanctuaries within them, whether that is wilderness or wilderness study areas or lands that are managed as wilderness, that creates a sanctuary opportunity for intrusion that has become devastating in terms of the drug impact on our society. But as a rancher, I worry about other things as well. I worry about the biosecurity aspects, that if a terrorist opportunity arose where certain livestock diseases could be heaped upon us by simply cutting a barbed wire fence, running them through, fixing the fence, and leaving it. We have that aspect. We need to be on this ground, and our absence will just offer greater opportunities for these cartels as we see in Arizona.
Well, yes, indeed, absolutely. And speaking of Arizona, what the impact that this monument is having on your ranch, it's not just in New Mexico, right? This affects ranchers all across our nation. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Steve.
No, well, Arizona is the model that we don't want to be. And there's lots of complexity in how these smuggling corridors are created. But the big rural areas managed by federal agencies has been the draw in Arizona. This monument itself could become the most dangerous of all because of the ultra-modern railroad that exists on part of the northern boundary of the Potrillo footprint of the monument, where 6 or 7 unit trains are parked at any one time awaiting east-west clearance. We can only envision the opportunity for terrorists there. This is nuts. This is crazy to put these large sanctuary areas on our border. And Arizona demonstrates the outcome.
Right, indeed. Well, Mari's here, and she had a few questions for you.
Steve, can you speak to the benefits that ranchers provide to the ecology of the land? For example, herding and what the animals do when you herd them from pasture to pasture, what they do to the grass? Well,
grasslands were evolved with hoof action, with herd action, with buffalo, and Marty, you and Martha saw what we're trying to mimic in that regard. But I think the listeners will understand the aspect of water first and foremost. On our 90-plus sections of stewardship, we provide every drop of water for livestock and cattle and wildlife alike. Our ranches have become natural systems with the movement of cattle on them and with the provision of water. Remember, this is a desert. This isn't an uplands condition with forests and running streams. We are a desert. The most easily understood aspect of our stewardship is that water availability. We could talk about the customs and culture we provide. We can talk about the craft that we practice. But I think the listener can understand most simplistically the water provision that we are so important in.
Steve, can you also describe your ranch's proximity to the actual Organ Mountains?
The Organ Mountains represent 12% of the total footprint. This whole thing was sold on the basis of the Organ Mountains, and they are beautiful. Marty, you're from here. You know what you see when you wake up in the morning and you look at the Organs. But 88% of the footprint has nothing to do with the Organs. If you look at the Potrillo area by itself, it would be the 15th largest national monument in the nation. If you look at the Las Uvas footprint, and that's where we ranch, we're actually larger. These lands, like on our ranch, were never considered for national monument, were never considered for wilderness study area, were never considered on the basis of scientific review for such protection. The use of the organs has been the hoax played upon the public. We all want the organs protected, absolutely. But I also want our customs and culture protected in this unique little community of ranchers that are at full risk.
What kind of grade would you give BLM in terms of maintaining the monument area that your ranch occupies?
Again, the long-term aspects will not be known fully until the management plan. And by the way, I was told once by a BLM official that a grandmother in Miami Beach has as much to say about the future of my ranch as I do. And I think that it is somewhat unfair to speak in broad general terms about BLM. There are individuals within the BLM that absolutely are supportive of our position, and we respect them, and we need them. But they've also overseen a reduction of livestock across the West that is moving eastward. There are 30 to 60% decreases in animal numbers across the West on the basis of maintaining management plans that disallow any expansion set forth. Either you hold the line as it is or you diminish grazing. No business in the world can excel and remain robust if they're required to hold its status quo. And that's the burden that the BLM carries.
Absolutely. That's an excellent way for us to close out this segment. How can our listeners get a hold of you or the Western Heritage Alliance and be of help to you? Is there an email address? Is there a phone number you can leave?
How am I going to do this, buddy? I'm not used to big-time emailing. Can I say that I will get you a website, Martha?
No problem at all. We know you're working hard on the ranch, feeding America, taking care of our ranch land there in New Mexico.
In the interim, if anybody does have questions or would like to support these ranchers, they can reach me at Mari, that's MARI, at cams-marketing.com.
I think
Great.
That's the best way. And one more quick thing, if I may. I want more than just grazing language. I think this little ranching community needs to become the object of national security. We are the first responders. We are the eyes and the ears on the border constantly. It is absolutely necessary that we're there, and I think we need to be raised to the purpose of either the president's actions or congressional actions. And I would ask President Trump to take a look at us. Come see what really is taking place on the ground and look at us in our eyes and see the world that we face.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time. Thank you.